All right, welcome everyone to another episode of the Business Freedom Podcast. I'm super excited. I've got Dan Holt out of Springfield, Missouri. I met Dan sort of randomly coming out of a mastermind recently, and encouragement for all of you to hang with us because Dan's got one of the leanest operations that I know of, and the production levels that he does on his team are rare in our industry. So, Dan, why don't you start off? Give us a little bit about like your team personally, the market you serve, kind of just intro the conversation.
Okay. So, by the way, thank you. I run a team of, there's about 15 total on our team, but give or take one or two every month, depending on who is and who's not cutting it. Don't let them hear that. And we have 5 in production. That's 10 admin, including our ISA and OSA division. We did almost 500 transactions last year, and our average transaction count is about 100 transactions per agent, per production member on our team.
Awesome. And I think that's the exciting thing, the cliffhanger. We'll unpack really how you got to that point. And let me ask you a question before we continue. And I think it's valuable to know, if you're willing to do this, are you prepared to share the good, the bad, and the ugly about your growth journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I like sharing the bad sometimes most, because that's where the growth comes.
Yeah, for sure. And I think if more guys and gals in our industry really shared the nuts and bolts, the uglier sides of building a business, I think we'd all be better off. So we appreciate that.
I'm going to expand on that just a little bit. It is funny how anytime we meet up with people, especially from outside of our area, we all want to talk about how it's like an ego check really fast, like this is what I do, this is where I am, and yet nobody wants to. We all feel like this internal, like it's all falling apart, right? It's a hot mess all the time. It's chaotic, and none of us want to admit that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it feels that way forever. Like it felt that way, when I sold 27 homes my first year to 450 homes. It all feels the same, Why don't you get the motivational ball rolling, Dan? Is there a success quote that you can share that's kind of pulled you through some of the challenges you had over the years?
Yeah. So my biggest one is on when I first came in. I didn't even know what this meant really, but I'm continually trying to remove limiting beliefs. And one of the quotes, and I'm going to sound really ignorant now because I don't remember who said it, but it's like Mark Twain, I believe. But it's whether you think you can or can't, and maybe it's Zig Ziglar actually, and I'm sounding really ignorant now, but whether you think you can or can't, you're right.
Yeah.
And it's really simple, and it's not like earth shattering, but genuinely, like, you have to look and internalize and go, do I actually believe I can do this or not? Because if I do believe it, I will achieve it. If I genuinely don't believe it, and you're the only gut check on that, but whether you think you can or can't, you're right.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it's actually multiple people have said it because I've researched it. And I think Henry Ford is the guy that is most commonly coined, that quote, and it's super powerful, and it's true. Dan, kind of explain to us a little bit about your growth journey. Like, when did you get into the business? What did the first few years look like? When did you decide to start a team? What'd that look like? Kind of start to unpack the conversation a little bit for us.
Okay. So I got into real estate in 2009. I had built homes prior to that, and we were building about 30 or 40 homes a year. And obviously we all know what happened with the new construction in the residential real estate market as a whole about that time. I decided to get my license just to help supplement the business. And what ended up happening was I started having a lot of business coming in, and I was pushing business away. And the market got so bad that I just jumped into sales. And I thought, so I went to a mega agent camp. I think it was fall of 2010. And my eyes were just completely open to seeing people at all different walks of life and areas in smaller markets with very little time in the industry, just thriving, $70, $80 million people a year that have been in it 3 years in towns of 40,000. And I looked at it and said, I can do that. I can do that. I can follow a path and I can do this. So about 4 years in, so my team is now, I think, in its 6th year. Jen, who you got to meet and talk to before, was the first Of the team I have now, she was the original person that came. She came on the buy side. I had a couple admins at that time. I started getting leverage really fast on the admin side. I had read the Red Book enough that I was following an organizational model on who to hire, how to hire, and when to hire them. And I'm not gonna lie, I deviated from that a couple times, and every time I did, I failed. And I know there's other ways to do it, and yet I stuck as close as I could to that. And so, you know, and my goal at that point in time, so I knew that this. I always say that this is a marathon, not a sprint. And I see so many people, and everybody's different. So this is their business decision. Mine is different. My goal for the first 4 years, I hired one position per year. And that's not exciting, and that's not flashy, right? Like everybody wants to hire 19 people in their first 6 months of business when they want to hire a team. Mine was, and I hired in the beginning of fourth quarter every year. My goal was to have, so, you know, obviously first I started with a transaction coordinator. Then I started the next year, I had a marketing person, or, you know, a general admin or a listing manager. And then I hired a buyer's agent. Now, after my first buyer's agent, I went to a listing specialist, and then that's where it got sloppy. And I backed up, and then I went according to model. But that was probably one of the most pivotal things is I spent and even though sometimes the name of that person in the role changed, the role never changed. My goal was to gain mastery within role and what I look like as a direct interaction with the addition of that role. Now, I'll tell you, once that got to about the third year, it grew exponentially because I put the right people. I was building the foundation that the whole company was going to be built on. And like I said, some people did come and go till I got to the right person. Once again, that'll all be my fault because I put them in the organization. And I think that's one of the reasons that we've been so efficient and effective is because they did have the right people on those first 3 hires.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's talk about the first maybe 2010, 11, 12, kind of break down your growth into like a few phases. Let's talk about the first phase. Mm-hmm. How messy was it? How we work in a lot of hours? Yeah. What the first hire take over? Talk about that first, and then we'll go to the next phase.
Okay, so I was probably 3 years into it before I hired my first person. So, you know, I told you, I was kind of doing a little bit of part-time here and there, dabbling in it, if you will, having some success. Then, you know, my first year in real estate, I made $24,000 with very little effort. I mean, I didn't put much into it. Then the next year, I think it was like $3 million producer, and a $3 million producer, you know, so I was making anywhere from 90 to 100 grand. But my life was really sloppy. You know what I'm saying? I was doing everything, and I hate paperwork, and I hate data entry, and I hate making listings live, and yet that all had to happen. So yeah, I was working evenings, I was working Saturdays, I was working Sunday. I had no family life. I had, you know, there were strains everywhere. My customer service was terrible. My clients weren't happy with me, and leads were falling off the table. Right. So, I would think it's not genius, but when I went to hire the first person, I thought, well, if I can just take the stuff that, number one, I don't want to do, the things that I'm bad at, and the things that are expected to be done off my plate. So I hired a part-time lady. I paid her $18,000, and I jumped to $11 million in production. So I spent $18,000 to gross $318,000. So my net was $300,000. So I 3 times my income by an 18-hour a week help. That then transition, you know, and then of course, but the main thing, and the thing that people I think fail to do faster, is I then doubled my dollar producing activity. Mm-hmm. I was in the field. And we all know that the most common mistake that people make is they get busy, so they hire a buyer's agent, and we get the whole, like, you become their assistant, etc. No, the thing that people miss is you're giving too much money away. You're giving 50% of the paycheck away. I could show you by the numbers. I only gave 5% of the paycheck away to have an admin. Mm-hmm. Very highly leverageable, but people don't double down on the dollar producing activities. They just all of a sudden get quality of life back, and they're not willing to continue. Well, you have to consider and understand we're in a heavy growth trend of the business. You know, we're trying to make these leases, so you've got to pay all the dividends up front, right? Like all the hours. So yeah, that was sloppy and painful. Then I got a buyer's agent, and we were remotely successful together. And once again, it just continued. And so I added leverage for that person as well. Now that wasn't truly out of model, and like I said, that kind of came and went as far as I changed the admin a couple times, and then we hired a listing specialist, and he was lead generating, creating more opportunities for the buyer's agent. That was my out of model with it. So, I failed. I slipped back there. I had to let somebody go, and it wasn't their fault. Ultimately, it was mine. But, the thing that I found is that leveraging off all the admin. So then Jen came to the team. They're about, the third year. She replaced the existing buyer's agent I had. She exited on her own, and then I found Jen, luckily. And Jen, initially, I recognized how talented and how good she was. And I saw how much time and effort she was spending in the office preparing. And I recognized really fast that her one thing was being in front of people. I actually put myself in the office helping her because her conversion ratios were so high. And her creating urgency, and of course I replaced myself with an admin really fast, but it was literally where we wouldn't see Jen during the day. She'd come in at 8 o'clock and pick up folders, 3 sets of folders, and she just turned and burning through people and creating all these deals. So, the deals just started. So I just started creating more leverage around her because I could spend $30,000 on an admin to help her. They were scheduling her showings. They were setting up all her data sheets. They were writing her offers. She was literally just meeting people. So we've really focused on our team. I heard Bill Crespo say a long time ago at a Keller Williams function, he said, those that make the most money in our industry can master repetitious boredom. Or according to Gary Keller's one thing, or the 80-20 principle, not trying to throw all the cliches here, but it was just finding out what's the lane in what's your highest dollar producing activity? What's the one thing that you can do everything else becomes easier or unnecessary? And it was keeping her in front of people. It was like, and I think people try to get too entrepreneurial, and they try to do 10 tasks because they think that everybody wants, it's one of Gary's myths in his book is a myth is that people want you involved. No, your customer satisfaction goes down when you try to do the paperwork. So leverage it off and focus on selling their houses or helping people find houses. Sorry, that was probably a longer rant than you were expecting.
No, that was awesome. The one thing you said in there, which I hadn't heard it said that way, is that, as you bring leverage into your world, you must double down on revenue generating activities. Mm-hmm. And that's something, when I was early in my journey, I hired a licensed assistant, and I was so feverishly looking for the next sale. Like, I didn't care if it closed. Like, there was more than one occasion I went into a closing room and an attorney, and I didn't know which client was mine.
Yeah.
Not a proud statement. Like, I'm not saying that you should do it that way, but it was really just like, what's the highest and best use of your time as a team leader? And you've got to be willing to do the things, in a fast and furious way and not exit too quickly, and follow a model.
Well, it's all, you're right. And I will tell you, one of the best compliments, and I've never heard it said the way you said it, so I really like that. One of the things one of the biggest compliments is when you walk into the closing room and you don't recognize who your clients are. And that sounds terrible, but it means that you're highly leveraged. It means your people are, and I'm being facetious when I say that. Obviously, that's a far extreme. But it is true. That's when you're in your lane all the time and not jumping back in. And I'll tell you, if you're jumping back in, it's because you don't trust the people you have around
Yeah.
you.
As you were pushing through growth, so give me some numbers so everyone gets a little bit of a context. You started, you made your first hire, that 18,000 was in 2010?
Yeah, essentially 2010, 2011. Yeah.
Okay. So give me just some numbers of units. So this year you'll do 500 sides, right?
We'll do about 600 this year, probably.
Okay, 600 this year, so 2018. Rough numbers, 2011 through 2018.
I have them exactly. If my computer had been working, they're pinned on my wall. But there is basically a 25% growth every year. So, when Jen came on that year, I think she did 50. We were probably about 125 transactions as a whole. We then jumped from 125 to 250, 250 to 280. Like, there was a year that we only had about 30 transaction growth. then, 335, 432, and then we'll do 600.
Okay. And then the years where there was just admin support, what did those first few years look like for you?
Those are actually some of the, of course, keep in mind, it's easy to do a 50% increase of business when the number's 50.
Yeah.
Those are the most impressive as far as statistical growth. But I saw the biggest growth through the first 2 admin hires. And then of course with Jen, the buyer's agent help. I'll tell you where I failed with this. I did not adapt. What I really focused on is that everybody has a specialization. Even my admin, my ISA, like everybody has one thing they do and they do it over and over. Thus that nobody else in our industry, in our competition can beat us. That makes sense. No one can beat my listing specialist on a listing presentation because she does 2 a day. Nobody can beat, right? Most agents do 1 a week. Well, if you do it 10 times, you're going to be better, right? So what's funny though is that I, as the leader, did not jump in specialization for myself as fast. I hired people for specialization. I didn't though. I still kind of kept doing a little bit of everything. Maybe where it was needed, maybe just where I felt like I was better or I wanted this, or maybe it was like ego or pride that I thought I needed to do it, or I just wanted to be busy. I think if I had gotten out of my own way faster, we would have grown faster.
Yeah. Yeah, which is a pretty bold statement considering your growth.
Yeah.
As you were kind of pushing through all those phases, I mean, did you have a background in managing people and tracking and marketing and how did you push through all those different phases? Because they were likely pretty uncomfortable for you, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then I think that we'd all be lying if we didn't say I'm scared to death a lot of times when I wake up, and you question and wonder if you're the right person, and almost kind of like, how the fire did I get here, right?
Yeah.
One of the big things that helped me a ton was I jumped into coaching immediately. Like within 2 years of having the team or having an assistant even, I jumped into coaching. Everybody was telling me that was a terrible idea. And I did. I actually got challenged into it on a bet, and I lost the bet. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And that's really, and obviously the events that we go to, those things challenge me. And I surround myself with people. My dad used to always say, you have a decision, you can run with the turkeys or soar with the eagles, right? And I think that a more professional way to say that is you are the sum of your 5 nearest relationships. I try to hang out with people who are doing way more than me, because they've been there. They've already done this. So you and I both know that, there's challenges that you hit all along the way, and it can be people, it can be systems, it can be models, and they've already done it. And so I think that I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, no, it's good because we say in real estate B school, we say, it's going to be really hard. We say it's going to suck either way. Yeah. But a better and more, PC way to say it, it's going to be really hard either way. Selling 1 to 2 homes a month from now until you're 77 and hoping you have some money in the bank is going to be really a hard life.
Yeah.
And it's going to be really hard and challenging, and at the same time, super rewarding to figure out how to be a systems builder, a manager, a hire, an onboarder, a leader, a visionary. That is challenging and super fun. So I think you answered it perfectly.
Well, I'll tell you something that I've recognized recently, and I continue to tell myself, and I've used it in some coaching moments with people I've been trying to help, is that complacency is the enemy of growth. So when you feel comfortable, you're not going anywhere. And who wants to go home and talk to their significant other or their best friend and say, you know what, I'm not growing, I'm not challenging myself every day. I try to become a better person every day, and that doesn't mean do more deals. You have to embrace the suck. Like you said, you have to embrace the fact that this is really, really sloppy. And if you're afraid of being sloppy, potentially growth isn't, I don't even want to say that because that sounds negative. You got to embrace how sloppy it is. And that's what I meant earlier. Like, I wish we could just be transparent and say, it's really nasty and ugly growth is, and I love it. Like, bring more. Like, we'll figure it out. And unfortunately, people get mad. It's I get that. And all it does, breaking the system exposes the holes. You can't plug the holes if you don't know where they are.
Yeah. Awesome. I want to transition to, we talked about it earlier. There's not enough of our failures are kind of, we don't put a spotlight on them. Is there a time you could look back on that was really challenging? Maybe it felt like a failure. There really are no failures, right? But a time that was challenging that you think our listeners can benefit from your perspective on.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily like transactionally where I really messed up. But I mean, like, I'll tell you philosophically, in my opinion, I always fix anything that I or my team messes up. Like, that's the only way to do it. Gary will tell you that, don't judge me by my mistakes, judge me by how I fix them. But I'll tell you, yes, because I think that we are in the people business, obviously in real estate, but really as far as a team, you're really more in the people business. And understanding that those people are your clients now. I'm stealing a line from Jen. That Jen and Emily and Nicole, they're my clients now. But where my biggest failures have always been shortcutting the system. And what I mean by that, obviously, one of my number one roles and jobs right now is talent acquisition. Or it was clearly, and the better talent you hire, the fewer times you have to hire talent, right? Mm-hmm. But every time, so, when I was looking for our team leader for our office, I pulled, and this isn't that impressive, but I pulled 50 resumes to KPA 10 to talk to 5 to get to 2 to hire 1. And I think too many people, anytime you have a poor person in your industry, good looks great. Mm-hmm. Right? But it's really going through that. I believe that the quality comes in the quantity. And simply, I would say we're not having enough talent conversations, period. And so my biggest failures, because if my biggest successes come from the people that I've directly put in my organization, then my biggest failures would also be the times I've shortcut that system. I'm not in the, I'm in the real estate business per se as much as I was in that. I can tell you a listing presentation, I can do, et cetera, but we're in the people business. And every time I fail and here's the thing, I fail that person. I'm not failed myself. Mm-hmm. I fail that person. You were talking earlier about, motivator or sense of urgency. And I have children, that was a huge motivator to me. It puts this internal pressure on you I have to provide to feed a family. Every person I put on, I just took on average 2.2 more mouths to feed, right? So you look at it like that and you go, there's 15 people in our organization. I got 50 people I'm directly responsible for, 15 families. And if I don't show up and do my job every day, then I have to look one of them in the face and say, I'm sorry I didn't show up and I let you down today. And people want to internalize and go, it's about my family. No, it's about their families too.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. You talk to team leaders where they're looking to hire a buyer agent or just an agent looking to get leverage, and and somebody was referred to them from their church or a past client, and it's the only person they looked at. Like, they have no recruiting system, and we're there. We're hitting the same numbers. 2 to 3% of folks that apply for a sales position on our team will be invited. We'll go all the way down the funnel. And that's one thing I wish I did earlier on. Realized that the whole recruiting talent acquisition game it becomes more important than listing lead generation.
Well, and sometimes we go with our gut really fast and we kind of have an idea whether they're going to work or not. But the only way that you get to that point is by having more conversations with people about talent.
Yeah.
I will tell you this also, and we talked about this last time, and I want to throw it in here, with the exception of Jen. Jen came to me, she was she was our buyer's agent, the 4th person according to the organizational model. She came to me from another team at a competitor's office, and she is the only person out of 15 that has any prior real estate experience to join our team.
Yeah.
I'm not saying realtors are bad and don't put them on your team. Our philosophy has been, because go back to what we said before, if you believe it, you can achieve it, or, whether you think you can or can't, you're right. People coming outside of the industry have no perception or limiting beliefs as to whether they can or can't do what I'm telling them they can do if they just follow our systems and our models. So they come in from day one going, okay, you said I can do this. I believe you. they've not been screwed up by other agents or what our industry says is and isn't possible. I'll give you a case in point. I have heard over and over and over again that a top buyer's agent in a company in real estate can do 50 transactions a year. You've heard it before, right? A good buyer's agent can do 40 to 50 transactions a year. Who said that? Why? Why did we just put that ceiling on them? Because my lead buyer's agent, who you met, did 232 deals last year. My point is, people paint themselves and other people paint people into a box and they believe it.
Yeah.
People that believe that, I don't want people to have any experience on what is and what's not possible.
Yeah. We have it's a really good point. We have a guy on our team I think he's only like 9 months on our team. He's 23 years old. I think he had like one other job before he came to us, and we put him through our 8-week training program. He graduated. So week 5, they're on the phones full out. You have to meet a certain amount of people. And like a couple of weeks ago, he set 9 listing appointments and 6 buyer appointments in a week. Wow. And conventional anything will have you telling a guy like that, that you can't possibly do that, 9 months in, but he's been getting after it every day for 9 months, and his book of business is catching up with him. And, it's a life changer. He's getting married super young. He's got a wife coming on board, and, so it's exactly right. This industry, you're better off. We same thing. Every one of our salespeople have come from outside the real estate industry.
Right.
Where they're the DNA of a salesperson. They don't even need experience in sales necessarily. But yeah, that's super awesome.
Well, you think about it, and really the focus is I'm trying to hire the right person. Real estate's just a skill. It's a trained, trackable playbook skill. It's not. I hate to say it's not rocket science. It's really not. It's a trained skill. But I cannot teach motivation. I cannot teach ethics, and I can't teach a sense of it. You either have it or you don't.
Yeah. And one thing I heard, my pastor did a sermon once, and the title of the sermon was, it was The Power of Potential. But he talked about, and the analogy was with a female, trying to find a partner, and it was potential versus patterns. Mm-hmm. We want to see the potential in people versus the pattern. I don't care how old you are. If parents paid for college and you didn't have to work a job, and, you don't have a hustle or a grind aspect to you, or, you're just not going to work on our team. So, and I've made a lot of hires on potential. Everyone that's attracted to real estate, generally they think that the industry is easy, and they have that underlying, this is going to be easy. What's your split? Of course I'm going to go out there and I'm going to sell 20 and 30 homes. I want to make 6 figures. And It's no, you're going to be out of business. 82% chance in 2 years, you're not going to renew.
Right.
And nobody advertises that. So I'm 100% with you. Dan, tell me about a time in your journey where it was like that transition point where aha moment or the light bulb went off. Was there any kind of, really a success moment where you're like, man, this is it?
Probably my best one, I would say, and I'm not even here now. I guess I almost have 2. One was the year that I went to Jen, and I would say this was probably 2016. Let me back up, because the fall of 2015, we were sitting at Mega Agent Camp, and John Davis had kind of gone through, clearly the growth initiative was already in place, but he put an expectation to the team leaders at that point in time that the 2-10-40, basically 2 appointments a day, 10 a week, 40 a month. And so we had set our team goals, I think that year, for 435 transactions. And I was sitting with Jen and Emily and Nicole at Mega Agent, and I sat and I did the math really fast. And I went, hey, wait, 450, the goal of 450 would be 2-10-40. So if I went on 2 listing appointments a day, 10 a week, 40 a month, converted at a 75% appointment to listing ratio, and if I sold 75% of them, and if we 1-to-1 ratioed the buyer off per closing, it would be 450 transactions. And I went, wait, and it was just this light bulb, and I went, it's that simple. It's really, any business plan can be scaled to any number, but it's just that simple. And I sat down that night with him and I said, okay, here's where we're going. And in order for me to do that, I've got to completely give up the buy side to Jen, because I can't go on 10 listing appointments a week. And I took 272 listings that year, by the way. But I had to completely walk away, and that was scary, because I was giving up a portion. I thought I was giving up a portion of the business. What happened is everything doubled and duplicated, right? So, but that was our biggest year. And then the following year, that was 16, 17. We brought a listing specialist on, and it was that was the first time for I myself went, this is my one thing. This is my one thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it over and over and over again, and no one in town is going to beat us or touch us, because I'm going to do it. And then I brought somebody else in, and then we did it, and now they're doing it. But I think that was, for me, it's really easy for me to look outside in and go, this is what you need to do in order to get into specialization, or to get into your one thing, or stay in your lane. But it's really hard to coach yourself sometimes to do the same thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to dig into the current business a little bit. What are some of the more profitable lead sources for you? I know your database for sure.
Sure. Yeah. Referrals number one for anybody.
Yep. Also, are you willing to share kind of what you do a little different? That was a huge takeaway, the event strategy that you guys have. I think that's really cool. But what are some other profitable lead sources? And then what are you doing special with the data bank?
Well, honestly, that's a growth opportunity for us. The data bank is, we're about a 50% repeat referral business every year. And I don't think that's unhealthy, because we're always hunting and gathering new business. The most profitable side of our business, obviously not most profitable, but is our OSA department, our for sale by owners, our expireds, and our circle prospecting off successes. Now, when I say successes, we circle prospect. So, when we list and sell a house in a day, we'll circle prospect that, we'll door knock that stuff doesn't cost any money. And I shouldn't say it doesn't cost any money, because clearly I have a person dialing on the phone. But those are our highest. And I'll be honest with you, our agents don't really lead generate. Now, we don't have a set block time for our agents to lead generate. I also have 4 people in our lead generation office that are driving these leads. I mean, my people in production, clearly with those numbers, they're meeting with people and talking with people all day long, every day. So in essence, they're kind of, I wouldn't say lead generation. I've got the lead generation side leveraged off. So, and then I talk to you, naturally we have events that are driven around bringing people into us. We're also, I don't know if we talked about this last time, we just started our own non-for-profit. And our goal is to build and give away a home every year to somebody. So that's, as Gary would call it, strategic giving. Clearly I'm giving to bless somebody else's life, but I'm also creating something around people being able to come outside in and either contribute time, labor, money, materials, that kind of stuff. And it's clearly all, it's not directly branded us, yet they know that it's us that's doing it. So I think it's giving people an avenue to bless somebody else, so all those things, in my opinion, and that's not an expensive deal, really. Matter of fact, I set it up through KW, the non-for-profit, same one that KW Kids Cares and my coach Mandy Monahan. It's the same one that it costs like $3,000 to set up this non-for-profit, and we can change people's lives. So talking about a legacy worth leaving, I'm looking at a 10-year run of, I want to give 10 homes away and change 10 people's lives forever.
Yeah. Awesome. What about any lead sources that you tried that have failed miserably?
Yeah, a lot of them. I think one of our worst ever, we all get pounded with these phone calls by lead generation sources that want us to buy their special website and sell us the seller leads. We're so heavy on the phone that all these systems wanted to sell us, but basically they have all these landing pages out there to attract sellers and attract buyers and all this. None of them were branded to us. There was all their systems and it was all their leads. Honestly, anything, I hate to say this, but it's true. Anything that you pay for. And I did not do good on television in our market. Cost a lot of money, essentially no return. And I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying we have a very, very heavy follow-up model. I mean, it was not because we didn't pound these people for information or follow up with them or hound them. Just a really low conversion for us. man, all these unbranded, we'll sell you X amount of seller leads. And I'll tell you, in our market too, and I've tried it, the outbound calling that was leveraged off our team and VA'd from areas that have clearly, every area has an accent. I have an accent. If you don't talk like me in my market, they're not going to talk to you. So, I mean, and I've had people try it, and they'll have people from outside of the country calling redneck rural Missouri, and buddy, that's the fastest way to get hung up on in our market.
Yeah. Yeah. How about something you're doing really well right now in your business?
Honestly, we're nailing it. We love to compete. Some people say, I don't want to compete. Obviously, we know that the highest conversion ratio is repeat and referral, right? They're also not exciting. Like we love our repeat and referrals. It's our data bank, like you said. We love the spirit of competition. We get excited when we're going up against 5 or 6 people, in all fairness, because we walk away with 80 to 85% of them. But it is strict practice. It is the role play, and it is the walking in and converting those. It's the challenge. Once again, we talk about growth, right? It's the challenge of, but we have no unique lead generation courses. It's for sale by owners. It's expireds, and it's following up on internet buyer leads and hounding them and until they finally buy. We say you're going to buy or die with us. I mean, you're going to physically have or file a restraining order. That's your only 3 options with our team. That's
awesome. What are you most excited about the future for the future of the business?
Our goals for our team. I don't know if you and I talked about this. We're starting to clearly. I move slowly on some things, but we're looking at unrolling a very slow expansion model. Just within Missouri, we've got St. Louis and Kansas City very close to us within a few hours, whose average sales prices are double ours. So there's a lot of opportunity there for us to go get 1 or 2 people from each market and have the opportunity to change their lives. But I'm really excited because through this growth, I've gotten an OP opportunity, which I still have to earn in Springfield. And, and I'm really, that has changed me as a leader because of the personal coaching I get for that. And I'm transitioning the team more to where I'm OPing the team, holding them accountable to numbers, holding the books accountable, and yet creating more opportunity for people within my organization. I'm excited about that potential, the opportunity there, as well as a little bit of expansion. So, I don't know how much growth in transactionally we're looking at our team because we're really happy with the size of our team right now. And yet I kind of coach myself on that sometimes too. Is that growth or is that complacency? Because we just talked about it. And that's a hard thing to check yourself out is I don't ever want to take my foot off the gas. So it's always about growth. But I'm really happy with what we have right now. We've got a great group of people who continually are driven to learn and receive coaching and give coaching and pour into other people. And that's really hard and unique to find.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think a lot of hard chargers, a lot of people that are constantly striving, I don't think they ever take that moment to think about, growth for growth's sake. It can really, hurt you in other areas of your life. And it could be this never ending, like, where am I going? Why am I going here? So no, I think that's awesome that you're even having that thought.
It does. I'll be honest with you. So the last 6 months have probably been my most philosophical development, or my development into like, why am I, because I think that our big why evolves all along the way also. And, I've had this kind of like, why am I doing this? Because it's not about money. I'll be honest with you. It's not about money. I am funding my perfect life. I've done all the smart things. I've been wise with my finances. I've been a good steward. And I'm not doing this for money's sake. That's not my motivator. And if it was, I would be greedy potentially. And that's not my motivator at all. My charge is to change other people's lives. And guess what? When you help enough other people reach their goals, you'll always reach yours. Just give it a whirl every now and then and pour more into and care more about other people than you do yourself and your own needs. You will excel faster and further than you thought possible.
Yeah. I think a lot of business owners struggle with just enjoying the ride.
Yeah.
I know I did. Are there anything regular practices you put in place to make sure you really appreciate the journey?
I wish I had a great answer for that, and I don't. It's it's easier to look outside in now that I'm a little bit more removed, because when I was in it, you just feel like you're in it and you're just going 8 to 5 and you're stomping out fires left and right. Now that I've been pushed out a little further, I'm kind of able to take more of a 30,000 foot view and go, man, this is really nice, and kind of can tweak and push things and move that. But that's been because of the people that I have with me. So
Yeah.
I wish that I could tell you I was a journaler. I'm not going to lie, I'm not. But I do appreciate and respect more of what we have and what our team's built. Sometimes by all this national exposure that not exposure, I mean, but training, I'm able to see other people and go, you know what, we are doing things really good, because all we know is our perspective, right? And it always feels like you're not doing it right sometimes if you're your own worst critic.
Yeah.
It's nice sometimes to go, you know what, we are. It's just, I don't know. It's nice to see other people's perspectives. Well, like this, in our conversation, getting to meet, and you look at it and you go, man, they got some things we can take and implement in our business, because clearly they have this very fine-tuned and oiled machine. And yet you say the same thing to us, and we feel like a hot mess, and potentially you do at the same time too. So it's just that healthy respect of, you feel like the wheels are coming off the bus and you're going broke every day.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, we say it's kind of like, we're building the airplane as we're flying it,
Exactly.
All right, I'm going to throw rapid fire questions at you. Just give me the answer that first comes to your mind, all right?
Yeah.
All right, so what keeps you up at night when it comes to your business?
Money, or lack of.
All right, what were you most afraid of when you started building the real estate team?
Failing and looking like a fool.
What's the best advice you ever received about business?
Oh, wow. Best advice I've ever received about business. I don't know. Pass.
No pass.
There's no pass. The best advice I've ever received about business. I think I would go back to helping other people meet their own goals. It's obviously a quote I read, but helping other people meet their own goals.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was like my first business card I ever had.
Yeah. Can you share one of your personal daily or weekly habits that you believe contributes to your success?
Healthy ones?
Yeah, healthy ones.
Honestly, for me, this doesn't sound really weird, but having a mindless outlet outside of business and real estate, for me, this sounds silly, but it's working on old cars and trucks. I have old muscle cars and I have old trucks, and it's just going out there and turning the radio on and thinking about nothing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I could use that advice. I like that one.
Yeah, they're cheap, man.
Yeah. If you could recommend one book for our listeners, what would it be?
2. One, you said 1. I'm going to give you a bonus. My favorite one still yet from Gary's Top 100, I don't know if you have to read it, but it is Angela Duckworth's book, Grit. I love it. It goes back to what we were talking about before. Why do some people succeed? Why do people that are exceptionally talented fail? And why were the people that weren't supposed to amount to anything overly successful? What is the differentiator between those people? When some things could be perceived as a negative, they're actually a positive. Read the book. It's awesome. And I really like Patrick Luciani's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
Yeah.
It's
awesome.
it was a great read for our team as a whole to understand each other's perspectives.
Awesome. What should you have shared with us that you haven't?
That's a great question. I don't know that I really have. That was pretty much an open book. I'll just reiterate a couple things that I said. Number 1, if money's your motivator, then greed will creep in. When greed creeps in, you things that are characteristic of people. We all know greedy people when you say greedy. And I'll just expand on the fact that if you pour into other, the hardest thing for me to learn is if I will make myself the least of these, I'll go where I want to go faster. And it can't be a selfish motivator, right? It has to be pure and genuine. But it goes back to my drive is not money. My drive is transactions. I love transactions, and I love people.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, though. You can't pour into, and that's why I talked about earlier, my team, they're my clients now, and I stole that from Jen. I can't pour into 500 people, but I can pour into 4 or I can pour into 5. And I can essentially, they can become my wealth determiners but if I pour enough into them, they then become the conversation, the relationship. But I have gone further faster by narrowing my focus and only talking to 4 or 5 people repeatedly over and over again, then trying to talk to 100.
Yeah. Awesome. So last question I have for you. There's a lot of people in our industry that are struggling, right? what words of encouragement would you give to them? Maybe to somebody that wants to build a team. They're maybe not making enough money on their own solo. What words of encouragement could you give to someone who's struggling right now?
Well, I'll tell you, I promise this, that people laugh all the time and they say that if Dan can do it, anyone can. Sincerely, but I'll go back to what I said that Bill Crespo said. Number one, pour into yourself. Go to training and learn things. Be consistent. I can show somebody numerically based on our average sales price, 100,000. If you would just come in the morning, number one, don't listen to other agents. Sound terrible because we're agents and we're talking. Don't listen to the average agents, because 80% of agents in our country are making less than $40,000 a year. That's not a life worth living. And it's fine money. Don't misunderstand. And everybody's goals are different. Come into the office every Monday morning, 8 o'clock, and do not get up until you've generated one listing appointment. That's it.
Yeah.
40 times a year, if you convert 50% of them, so that's a listing every other week. And if you sell 50% of those, it's 2 transactions. And if you convert one buyer off, that's 24 transactions a year. 24 transactions a year at our average sales price would be about $3 million. It's a $95,000 deal. Now, when the math gets really fun is when you go to 75% conversion ratio and sell 75% of them. Now I've got you making $200,000 a year, and all I changed was your scripts and your dialogues. Yeah. 64% of people sign with the first agent they talk to. But what they misunderstand is they lose the focus on the one thing. If they will just come in the office on Monday at 8 a.m. and not get up from their desk until they generate one listing appointment for that week. One. That's it. People they try to do many things. There's not 30 things to do. Lead generate for one listing appointment. Don't get up. Don't go home until you generated it. Most people say that'll take on average 2 hours. I don't know why. My point is, don't get up until, clearly go to the bathroom and eat lunch, but don't stop that until you've generated one listing appointment. And that, if you just do that, if you only do one, that's 24 closed transactions a year. Yeah. And that's terrible conversion ratios.
Yeah. And the thing you mentioned there was consistency. Like we had a new agent start on our team, and he started on Monday, and I go into the office on Tuesdays, and he came in, he's like, "Oh, hey Lars, I've seen you online or whatever, and pleasure to meet you." He's like, what advice do you have for me? And this is a young kid, like 22 years old. And I'm like, give it 7 years.
Yeah.
And he's like, what? I'm like, give us 7 years to have you making triple the amount of money your friends are making.
That's right.
And I'm like, Sharif, it sounds like, you're in it. You're saying the right things. I've heard good things about you. And I'm just really afraid you're not going to do it. You're going to be too impatient. And you're not going to master the skills. You're not going to do the basics and just that monotonous grind type thing. So, Dan, this has been awesome. I know you've got places to be and people to serve. So I just appreciate, being open with us and sharing. And there's about 50 things in this simple talk that we've had that are worth jotting down. So for the listeners, I hope you took the time to write down the gems that Dan has shared here. Real Estate B School, thanks to you, my brother. And everyone, just go out and build a life worth living, a business that's going to serve your life. Dan, we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks, man.
Good day.